State Weekly Volleyball Show. We are a member of the Big Sky Podcast Network, the Weber State affiliate, and the only volleyball show in the Big Sky Podcast Network. Want to point that out. Up your game, fellas. I'm your host, Colby Peterson. On the show today, we have returning for our panel, David Moore. David, been really sending us some good questions this week in the chat. I mean, he's been a great asset. So, David Moore, thanks for coming back and hanging out with us here on Weber State Weekly, man.
Glad to get some of my questions answered from the source.
That's great. Yeah, we're here. And so speaking of the source, folks, let's talk about tonight's show. We have for you a coach interview. We have not had head coach Jeremiah Larsen on the show tonight. And so he was kind enough to take a little bit of time to join us. So Miah, we're excited to talk to you tonight. And then after that, we'll talk a little bit about last week's matches, the final road trip of the regular season for the Wildcats, taking the trip up to Flagstaff to face the Jacks, and then hated rival Northern Colorado. We'll talk about how things went in Greeley. Then we'll preview a little bit about the final homestand of the season this weekend against Montana State and Montana, the last two matches, and the implications around what that could mean for the upcoming conference tournament, which will be hosted once again at Club Swenson this year. So we'll talk about all of that on tonight's show. But before we get into it, I want to encourage everyone, subscribe to the show, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you are served up good podcast content, Weber State Weekly there. We're also on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, good places to interact with us, trying the Instagram story up to date whenever we hear, recruiting news, whenever we see scores, not just from the teams that we cover, but also from some of the club sports like hockey, men's soccer. We've been trying to get some of that. Now rugby's going on, so we're trying to give those guys a little bit of love too. And then also we have our Patreon. You go to patreon.com/Weber State Weekly. Become a patron. We really are grateful to our patrons. They help us kind of support us. Want to let those folks know that we're going to be getting some content going soon for basketball, so be ready for that. But appreciate our patrons and everything they do. So thanks. So, all right, guys, that's the intro. We got through it. We want to welcome head coach Jeremiah Larsen back to the show. Miah, like I said, thanks so much for taking some time to chat with us tonight, man.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, we appreciate you because we know you're busy. Like we said, it's the final homestand of the season. You just did the athletics show, the show down at FARS tonight. And so if you didn't have a chance to catch that, I don't know where you can find it, but it's good.
Too bad. It's
on 103 on the Wave. Steve,
that was amazing, by the way. That was amazing. So.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, plus Klauke's there. I love Klauke. He's a great dude. I love his voice. I love Klauke's passion. But thanks for, like I said, taking some time to chat with us, Miah. So talking a little bit about this season, man. We've talked a lot about it this year. Young team, obviously, a lot of talent left the program because of graduation. A lot of seniors that had been throughout, the growth that you've seen in your past few years of really bringing the program from what I think folks would say was a kind of a doormat. No one saw Weber State volleyball as necessarily a power. And now a perennial team that is hosting the conference tournament 2 years in a row, some NCAA tournament wins, some NIVC tournament wins, conference championship. You got rings. Miah, talk to us a little bit about how, you've seen them progress throughout the season, because now we're close to that final homestand and looking at the conference tournament.
Yeah, it's been an interesting season for sure. We haven't had a freshman group make impact on us since my second season here with the great Rylan Adams and Megan Knighting and Hannah DeYoung and Hannah Hill at the time and Aubrey Saunders and all those kids. And so it's pretty impressive what they're doing for us right now and being able to compete at a really high level. I mean, beating teams like San Jose State and 2 points away from Utah State and beat Utah Valley. And to be honest, be able to compete with Northern Colorado this last weekend. I mean, that's a team that lost one kid from their roster last year.
Yeah.
And so they're legit. They're a legitimately good team, and to be down 2-0 and to be able to do what we did with a bunch of little freshmen running around. It's been a challenge for sure to be able to help them acclimate to Division I volleyball, but at the same time, it's been a fun one. So it's fun to watch the kids grow and be able to compete at a high level at such a young age.
Yeah, and compete they have, like you said, Miah. I mean, last weekend is I think a perfect example. The UVU match is another good one. The Utah State match, where just chips are down, especially that UVU and that Northern Colorado match, where you're going for the reverse sweep in those situations. You come back and you almost get it. I think that we'll talk about this in just a bit, but 7 match points in Greeley last weekend. Just a little bit of a learning process to close them out, but to be in that position with the group of fresh women that you have, incredible growth, and I think a credit to you folks and your coaching ability.
Yeah, I mean, you know me as well as anybody. I think sometimes we're a detriment to them more than we are to help them, but they're learning and growing and taking what it means to be a Weber State Wildcat and all the legacy that some of these amazing players have kind of built, and trying to put their own little their voice in it and their own spin on what it means and how to further the legacy that was previously built.
Well, I think you've added a lot, though, because you've had to change your lineup a ton over the course of weeks and even matches. You know, I think there's only been one match where you kept the same lineup from the first game to the last. And all during the early part of the season, you had one lineup and you kept switching it out. And once we were starting to think on this podcast that you had stabilized your lineup, then last weekend you had to do the reverse switch. You were starting with your late season lineup, and then you were ending the matches with your early season lineup, right?
Yeah, tell me about it. It's been that's been the challenge. I think we had some interesting things happen inside of our program last year where we lost a lot of pretty much an entire recruiting class. We lost a kid that we thought was going to be a really nice outside hitter to help replace for Rylan, and we thought she and Ashley Knighting would do a really nice job. And when that didn't happen, we couldn't really find a quality outside hitter replacement that would really made us really excited. So we decided to try to make Michaela Sorensen play a little outside instead of be a libero, and we went and got a transfer libero. And it's really hard to replace a libero like Michaela Sorensen, you know? And so throughout the concourse of the season, we have this competition going on, and Ashley's starting to really kind of pick it up. And so, and we like Michaela in the lib. So we decided to make that flip to give Ashley a shot. And that's kind of what we've been kind of playing with, these two different lineups. And it's just been a weird season because when we have to usually make a switch, we can just flip out an outside hitter. But when Michaela's playing libero, we have to wait until the entire set's over to put her on the outside hitter. And so it's been a really unique season in that type of way, and really poor recruiting or poor roster compilation on my part, I guess, that we're kind of stuck in this situation. But that just shows how amazing Michaela Sorensen is. Not a normal person can play a libero position at such a high level and play an outside hitter position also at such a nice level. And so it's just been a thing trying to fill Rylan Adams' shoes has been kind of a really daunting task for these kids, just a little bit, and for us also.
I keep waiting for a point where Michaela forgets she's wearing the libero jersey and blasts one out of the back row, but she hasn't done it yet.
No, she's a little too smart for that. I think most of us would probably do that, but she's a little too intelligent for that, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Miah, like you said, roster composition has been a challenge. There have also been some injury challenges that the team has had to work through this season, and I think that they've handled them, relatively admirably. Down a few players. Like you said, the last class didn't work out the way you had hoped. That's a thing that happens sometimes. You look at kids in high school and you think that this is the way it's going to go, but kids grow up and sometimes things change. So you've done, I think, a pretty good job in your, with your coaching staff to try and adjust, make those kinds of things happen. And hey, man, we're sitting here the last week of the season, and we're talking about, if certain things go right, Wildcats might have a share of the conference title. If I had told you that at the beginning of the season, would you have punched me in the face?
I don't know if I'd punch you in your face, but for sure I thought you'd be crazy. Like,
call me a liar for sure.
Well, we just knew what we were, like we knew we were replacing some really good pieces from last season. We knew we were replacing with younger kids, and there's a lot of question marks. So, I went into this season thinking if we were third place and at the end of the season, that's a nice rebuilding season for
definitely
a program, but realistically, fourth place was something we kind of were like, yeah, that's probably where we're going to be sitting. And as the season just progressed, we got more and more excited because the thing that we thought was going to happen didn't. Like, we realized these kids are doing a really nice job, and they were growing at an incredible rate. And so we were getting pretty excited. But to be in a position to have a chance of winning our regular season and beating Northern Colorado, I thought that was kind of a stretch. But at the same time, I knew that we're talented. I knew that we have the ability to do that. And as we've gotten through the season, more and more, I'm just like, hey, we have the talent. We just got to keep on growing as people and as a team and as in experience and handling adversity the right way. And I think we have a shot, And so I had to change my tune really, really quick because I knew what we had in the gym and what was capable of all these kids.
So going back to Michaela as an outside hitter, when I'm watching her play, she's got those unusual mechanics, right? Where she's rotating her left shoulder down and her right shoulder up to get her big swing. So did she come in with that, or is that something you guys taught her?
It's a little bit of both. She came in with it, and we like that swing. We think it generates a lot of power, and for a kid her size, she needs to generate that. She needs to maximize everything she's got. And so, like Sam, she's had the same kind of hitch in her giddy up, with her swing. And we actually taught that to her. We revamped her arm swing because when she first got here, she didn't hit it hard enough to score. And so we changed her arm swing. So it's actually a very common movement pattern for the men's game more than the women. Like the men actually use that swing a lot more. And that's where I come from. That's what I study every single day is how men play. And we try to steal their movement patterns. So you won't be surprised. Don't be surprised in about 2 years, Sane, Brielle, and Ashley will all have that same kind of arm swing. Because Danny kind of has it too. If you look really closely, she has the same type of movement with her arm.
It's too fast for me to see. So,
well,
it's definitely fast.
I think it's the glasses. You might need a new prescription or something. You're good.
Miah, like you said, replacing some all-time Wildcats this season. Names like Rylan Adams, who has her name in the rafters. Names like Ashlyn Power, who has her names in the record books. But as you've kind of worked through some of this, I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit about the back row, because the back row was a staple of the game that you all played last season and kind of the success that you had. And I think we've seen a little bit more back row, especially as the season has worn on. Last weekend, we saw Emma hitting more out of the back row, and there was some success there. And so I kind of wondered, has that been kind of like an in-season adjustment, or was it always working toward getting to that point where we could bring that back as something that was a dominant part of the Weber State strategy to win? Because it worked last year, and I feel like we're really starting to see it take shape now.
Yeah, I mean, the back row attack is something that we've always wanted in our program. And if you ever come to a practice, you'll watch Emma and Danny and all of them hit out of the back row. Kate it's part of Kate's progression as a setter, to be perfectly honest, is something that she has to get better at. And it's not so much the kids can't hit it. It's about when does Kate need to set it, and can she locate it in the right spot to be with the right tempo? I mean, that comes into play also, is it has to be fast and it has to be in the right spot. And that's something she is growing as a setter. She's gotten better as the season progresses. And the numbers in our practice, we stat every practice immensely. And so the numbers have started going up. And so now we're starting to go, okay, this is going to be something that we can start using. And so it's funny how the season progresses and how kids continue to get better. And that's a big thing in our program. It's not about going out and winning matches. It's about developing and growing throughout the season. And who we are right now is not who we're going to be in 2 months or a year from now. And so it's kind of fun to see this revolving door. And that's why you always train your systems. And so that way that when the opportunity arises, maybe we can use them in matches a little bit more than we have in the past or during the season. And so for sure, that's something we always want to do. It's just something that in the development of these kids that it's starting to really kind of come to fruition a little bit.
Yeah, and we've talked a little bit this year about how it's kind of house money this year, because the playing time that the fresh women are getting right now is really putting them ahead of schedule. It's not a very normal thing for them to get this level of playing time, but because of the opportunities presented to them and the need, it feels like, man, like all of these kids are going to play at a senior level when they're like juniors. Like, it's just incredible. And so it might be a little bit painful now, but not really, because we're talking about first place here. But at the same time, in 2 years' time, we're talking about with the amount of sets that they've played in their junior seasons, they're going to be playing at a senior level. And it's just incredible, because it's almost like an extra COVID year, where it's like we get 2 years of a senior now without the craziness of people getting sick. What a bonus.
What a bonus. Yeah. I mean, you've seen that, right? You've seen it when we first started this program in year 2, right? When we have all these freshmen running around trying to play at a high level. The difference now is that we're winning a little bit more than they did back then. And I think if they have the same motivation, the same discipline as those kids did, then I think their development could be who knows how great, and that's really the exciting part about it, is what might become out of these young kids. I mean, our roster is, if you listen to the starting lineup, it's senior, junior, sophomore, freshman. And so it's not just these freshmen. It's Kate Stanford, who's a sophomore. I have 2 more years with that kid. And Bailey Bodley, who's a sophomore, and we have 2 more years with him. And so I think it's exciting. I think it all depends upon how hard they're willing to work, though. Because if they don't work hard and they don't attack their mental game and their physical game, then they're just going to be average players, and they're never going to be what I think their full potential is. So we'll see how this keeps on playing out. But I think the ceiling is really high for them for sure.
So one of the other questions I had that's much more a general thing from trying to learn how to watch the matches and see what the coaching staff is seeing is what the middle blockers are keying off of, right? Because there's some different middle block strategies, right? Some where you're committing and some where you're waiting. I still can't track that very well. Can you tell us more about what, as a coaching staff, you guys are looking at for the middle blockers?
We're talking about blocking systems, I'm assuming, not them hitting. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Defense. So on defense, so we play we call it a bunch read. And so there's a couple of strategies inside of that, but we want to try to be able to read what the setter's doing and react to what she deals, right? And we don't care where the hitters are running. Like, hitters will run all over the place, but let them run, right? Like, they can't hit anything unless the setter sets it to them. And so what we're trying to be keen on is trying to see what the setter does and understanding her tendencies, and then watching how she releases the ball and then chasing it and using the blocking movements that we give them to move along the net. And to be honest, that's something that I don't know if our middle blockers is probably the weakest part of their game right now. Liana actually is one of the best middle blockers we have in our gym when it comes to blocking. Her offense is a little bit on the lower end, but she's getting better every single day. I'm really excited about her future, Liana Woodley. And so I think as she continues to progress as an offensive power, like, you won't be surprised to see her run around, because she is such a wonderful read blocker. But Sane and Brielle and Bailey are people that are getting better, but it's still an area that they need to continue to grow, is be able to see the game. Like, that was what Sam Sheets was so good at. She was able to see the game. She rarely got fooled. And when she did, she was still able to recover and make wonderful moves and get in the way. And so Sane is getting better at it. I mean, they're all getting better at it, and give us a spring and they will look completely different next August in terms of our blocking systems. So yeah, there's not a lot of commitments. We're not going to be jumping on a lot of stuff unless we read it right, or there's a scouting report that says we can do that. But for the most part, they want to stay, they want to see, they want to be ready, and then they want to chase, and they want to chase kids and get in their tendencies. So I don't know if that answers your question a ton.
I'm learning. That's what I wanted to do.
If that answers the question, then I'm glad I was able to answer it.
That was great. Miah, last question for you here tonight. I want to talk a little bit about signing day, which was just last week. 2 commitments to the Wildcats out, both outside hitters coming in, one from the great state of Arizona, the other right there in Utah. And so I want to talk a little bit about Ali Weist and about Nana Asiata. Talk to us a little bit about these 2 recruits, man, because now they've signed. It's official. Saw the press release come out. And talk to us a little bit about the recruiting process, what got you excited about them, and what you're most excited about having them on campus, like you said, for spring and getting ready for August next year.
Yeah, so Ali's a kid from Phoenix. I saw her play. I guess she's from Peoria, but I saw her play a while ago, like about a year ago, and we tried to get in on her, and some things kind of fell through the cracks, and then we got in on her again in February, I think, when I was out in Kansas City. And I know her club coach a little bit, and really well, actually, and he's a good dude, and he's like, you got to see this kid. And so when we watched her play, I mean, she has an arm, like, she can crack it. we're gonna get her into some mechanic situations that make her a little more efficient, of course, just like everybody we get into our gym. But she can absolutely just crack it, and she's pretty physical. Like she touches like around 9'11", almost 10 feet. And so long kid, good 6 rotation players. Like she can pass and she can move and play defense. But the thing that I loved watching about her is when I watch her play, you can just absolutely tell she just loves to play volleyball. Like she's the kid that just like you're just like, wow, that kid really enjoys what she does. It's not like she's doing it because her parents are making her. It's a means to an end to play volleyball in college. She's out there because she just loves the game. And she has a personality that her teammates gravitate towards her. Like her teammates love to hang out with her. They love to play with her. She is a good leader. And so that was the thing that as I watched her play, I mean, yeah, she had some nice abilities and nice skills, but she was just a wonderful teammate, a good kid. Loved the game of volleyball, which is a big deal for me, because if you don't love the game, I think a lot of times our coaching and our intensity in our game in our gym will kind of help you not love it anymore, because it just gets a little too intense. But she absolutely loves the game, and she just gets after it, and she's going to be a fun kid to watch for sure. And then Nana, I watched Nana for a long, long time and just really wanted to get a good gauge of not just how good she is as a player, but how good she is as a person. Is she competitive? Is she a competitive kid? Is she going to go fight and compete? And she does. Like watching when she plays and when she really gets after it, like when it means something to her, like there's a little nasty to her, which I really love. And when she came she came to camp during the summer, and I got to work with her, and I started kind of pushing her and nudging her like I do with all my players. And some players run away from that personality, and she just like came back at me, which was like made my day, like I'm like, are you gonna let that kid beat you up right there? And she's like, heck no. And then she goes and bombs the ball really hard. So she kind of has some attitude about her, which I absolutely love. And she's another kid that's just super physical, like 9'11" kid, easy, and has a good arm. And so I mean, I think they're going to be fantastic. They're going to take some time to get used to our system and the way we play volleyball, and not just the systems that we play, but also the attitude at which we play. But I think they're going to do a wonderful job for us, and they're going to be wonderful teammates, and they're going to be someone that people are going to really like to watch to play as they grow in our program.
Well, super excited to see them put on the purple and white and play for you folks. I mean, obviously there'll be some time to kind of work with them. We'll be excited to watch them play in the purple and white game next August, kind of get ready to kick the season off, but a long time before then. So we're going to look forward to this weekend and want to wish you all the best of luck, Miah, this in the final weekend of the regular season at Club Swenson. Hoping you all kind of get the thing that you're looking for, which is a dub against, Montana State, then Montana, to kind of close things out and keep the hopes alive for that number 1 seed. We'll see what happens, but wish you the best of luck, Miah.
Yeah, if we get a number 2 seed, we should be pretty fired up about that too. So we just want to go compete and hopefully hope for the best.
Yep, we want to encourage Wildcats.
The real thing with the seeds is to be able to host the next year, right? It's going to be nice.
Yeah, we didn't host it in 2020. 21's COVID year seemed to work out pretty well for us. So I think it's more about just growing and developing and putting ourselves in position to win. So
as a fan, I like when it's here.
Trust me, I like sleeping in my own bed during conference tournament too. I appreciate that. So
yeah, I was going to say
weekend. So
I was going to say the same thing, Miah. I was like, listen, I mean, even though the Wildcats did not host in the spring season, turned out pretty well. So you want to win the ring on the bank floor? Fine by me. In fact, maybe I prefer to win the ring on the bank floor, just so they can know. They need to know.
Hey, I have no comment on that one. So
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, Jeremiah Larsen, head coach of Weaver State Volleyball, I want to thank you again, man, for taking some time to chat with us here. Wish you the best of luck, and go Wildcats.
You guys are awesome. Thanks for all you do.
Thanks, man. We'll see you.
Thank you.
All right. I want to thank Miah one more time, man. Really appreciate him for hopping on with us, doing the thing. Just a little bit of time to chat with the mind that makes it all go. Like we said, the volleyball program is at a historic high. I mean, we've said it a number of times on this show that this is a golden age of Wildcat athletics, that, football's rolling, volleyball's good, softball's a dynasty. Soccer continues to be competitive, and, hoops is making their way. And so what a great time to be a Wildcat. But David, now let's take a look at this last weekend, man. Let's talk about Northern Arizona and the match in Greeley against hated rival Northern Colorado. Let's start with the NAU game, man. So the first thing I want to talk about is Danny Richens, man, because she had a really, not just a great match against Northern Arizona, but just a great weekend overall. In the Northern Arizona game in particular, 17 kills, 5 aces alone by herself, and 16 digs. What do you think helped her have to do that, not just against NAU, but also she did it again against Northern Arizona or against Northern Colorado? Like, what was it about this weekend that really start to roll and look like the Danny Richens we saw last season in the MVP?
Well, a good question, and I wish Miah was still here to answer it. She's not one of the freshmen and sophomore, or
Nope.
right? So that extra experience she's got under her belt. I don't know. I guess I just sort of have that expectation that Danny's the foundation on which that team is built. She and Kate seem like they're the top talents. Danny in a more showy way and Kate in a quieter way.
Yeah, just in a critical way. If you follow volleyball, obviously, like the setter position is so important. Like Miah was talking about earlier, just locating that ball, placing it in the way to run the offense, make sure that you're getting and taking advantage of opportunities on the other side of the net. But yeah, Danny Richens, what a weekend for her. I don't think she won Player of the Week, which is a friggin' travesty, but like, whatever, man. Like, well, it is what it is. She's the reigning MVP. I don't care. So let's talk a little bit more about NAU. So that first set, man, it seemed like Weber had it in hand, but then the Wildcats or the Jacks went on this like late 5-0 run, and it was once again spurred by Wildcat service error. And then they go up 22-19. And from that point on, it was a little bit back and forth, but then the Jacks take the first set because of that late run, which is something that if you've watched, that's something the Wildcats usually do against teams. It'll be maybe neck and neck, and then they'll go on these late runs out once they get into the late teens and early 20s and close the set out. That was the opposite in this case, where Northern Arizona's Kate Hatch, she didn't do really anything for the rest of the match, but in that late part of the first set, she goes bam, 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 3 kills and closes out that set. Do you think that Weber State made adjustments for her that kind of took her out of the rest of the match, or was that just kind of like a fluke? What did you think?
Well, this was a case where later in the match, we were changing up our middles and we were switching out Michaela to outside hit. I think that was the first action that Macy's gotten at libero all season? Because she came in as a libero recruit and she's played defensive specialist, but I don't remember if she'd ever donned the libero jersey until the Northern Arizona match. So it seemed like, we shored up our defense some and cut down on our hitting errors some, and that was enough to do the job.
Yeah, definitely cut down on some of those errors. The Wildcats hit 232 for the entire match, but after that first set where they hit just 163, I noticed a trend, and I'll talk about this in just a second. Well, I might as well just talk about it right now. A trend that I noticed is Weber has to hit above 200 in order to win. There's only been a single instance this season where they hit above 200 and lost, and that was that close loss to Utah State, which went to 5 and was almost once again a reverse sweep. So that seems like the magic number for the Wildcats. They got to hit 200, and that first set they didn't. They hit 163, but then afterward their numbers were well above 200, and they closed them out no problem. And so my question to you on this is, like, how do they ensure that continues to be the case, that they keep that number above 200 to keep the offensive rolling, because we've talked about, the blocking ability and about the digging ability to get the ball back up in the air and sent back over. How do they make sure that offensively they're keeping the hit percentage above 200 to give themselves a chance?
Right. I think that that Weber's offense can runs really well off of the serve, or the serve receive.
Yeah.
But sometimes, in the longer rallies, the offense doesn't really run as well. And so, so much of that comes down to your setting. And I've been really impressed with Kate this year that, you'll see some setters leave their middle hitters hanging, or they'll set something outside that's a total trap set that gets blocked. And Kate doesn't do that much. But on the other hand, she doesn't always get the middle sets where the hitters can get a powerful shot out of it. There are a lot of them that are good that way. And it seems like whenever Sane's in, there's a really nice connection between Kate and Sane that Sane almost always gets a strong hit. But
yeah, and those hits, usually like close to the net, not super high, but give Sane the ability to just kind of swing through, and very difficult ball to dig out because the velocity and just the set are just so perfect in the spot. They do have, it seems like they have a strong connection in getting those rolling, because we've seen Sane really send some balls this season.
Yeah, it's been nice. Yeah, there was something I'm going to bring up in the Northern Colorado once we get to that.
Yeah, let's talk about that, man. So I was going to say,
Okay.
we talked about Northern Arizona. The Wildcats, they get through. They do drop that first set against Northern Arizona, but they come back and win the next three, get out of Flagstaff with a 3-1 win, hit the road on to Greeley. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think this is a match that we've had circled on the calendar for all season. We know that the Bears beat the Wildcats last season in 5 sets to win the conference championship on our floor. It's in the Big Sky Conference's promo, which I really freaking hate, but it's there. And so the Wildcats only get to play the Bears once this season, and it had to be at the bank in Greeley. So let's talk a little bit about that match, because it looked like things were off to a rocky start. But start us off, David.
Well, the other thing about the preamble to the match was, who knew that it was going to be for first place after the Cats got swept twice by Portland State.
Yeah.
It seemed like it would just be hanging on, but then Portland State has dropped the whole series of games now.
Yeah.
And so, that was for first place. But in that first set, as the announcers said, that was the fewest points that Weber scored in a game all year. And it was just that first run where they got down like 14-4. They, when they managed to side it out, they had 3 consecutive service errors, and then the Bears just had that long run, and that set was over.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, they go the Bears go up 15-4 at one point, and the Wildcats are struggling there. I think they hit a negative .083 in that first set. So it's really it's tough against a good team like Northern Colorado, the reigning conference champions, to dig out of a hole like that. Not the way I think the Wildcats wanted to start. Obviously, we just had Miah on. He's very competitive. He wants to win. And to start the match like that against a rival like Northern Colorado, not ideal. But they, and then they come back in the second set. It wasn't as dire, but once again, hitting below 200.
Well, I
they hit .067 in the second set.
And I thought, he left the same lineup in pretty much, and they played a lot better. They played even for most of that set. And it's like, okay, we got our heads out of the toilet here, but that still wasn't enough. And so then he, that's when he pulled Michaela out and put Charlie in at libero, right? And there were so many matches early in the season where Charlie started at libero and then Michaela got shifted to that job. And Ashley then would come into outside hitter. Here we were doing the exact opposite, confusing the heck out of the announcers. It's I thought Michaela got some of her strongest hits that I've seen at the outside hitter position during this match. So it was a good lineup change.
Yeah, and worth noting too, like if the folks remember earlier in the season when we interviewed Michaela Sorensen, like she played outside when she was in high school in Idaho. It's not a position that is unfamiliar to her. You know, when she got to Weber State, we've obviously seen her talent at the libero position, very good defensively at digging the ball out and getting it back up in the air. Well, I think personally one of the best in the conference at it. And but she has that versatility. And so, like you said, there's an opportunity to bring Charlie in to play libero and put Michaela on the outside. And it worked. And so the third set is when things really started to turn around for the Wildcats. They get back above hitting 200. And they take it, and it was close, right? Like that third set was back and forth, and the Wildcats win a close one, 25-23. But I think that it felt like there was maybe a sigh of relief in that moment because it was like, we're not getting swept tonight. You know, we got 3. Let's just go and see what happens in 4. And the Wildcats once again answer in better fashion, you know, in 4, and they hit a nice 204 in that set. So not as good as the previous set, but they still are way ahead. They cut down a bit on the errors, and it makes a huge difference. And I think the defense really picks up there too. So I really believe that like that third set is a huge turning point mentally for the Wildcats in this match, because they go on it and then they win that third and they're like, yeah, we can play. And then they go on to win the fourth. And then it's a 5th set and all bets are off, right?
Yeah. And that 4th set did not go how I expected, because there's so many matches that one team takes the first 2, cannot sweep. So it goes 2-1, but then the team that won the first 2 picks up the 4th. And it's like, oh no, we got a different plot here tonight. So yeah. And then that 5th, I mean, nobody could get more than a point ahead during that whole thing, right?
Yeah, and the 4th was really interesting because it was a lot of long runs by the Wildcats. You know, they get a really good early lead. They go up 6-2. Bears answer back a little bit. They have a little run of their own, and they get it down to 1 at 9-8. But then the Wildcats answer with a big run to go up 16-9, and then another big run to close things out pretty much. They go up 22-14. At that point, you know, it would be a massive collapse, and they don't. You know, they hang around for a little bit, and then Emma Mangum closes it out to win at 25-18. Nice to see that bounce back. And like we said, you get to 5, then all bets are off. The Bears probably panicking a little bit because if you've looked at their schedule this year, they have dropped some. They've beat some good teams. You know, they swept the California road trip, going to Sacramento State, then going up to Portland State, winning both of those matches, but losing some interesting matches on the road this season. Losing to Northern Arizona and Flagstaff, losing to Idaho State and Pocatello to begin the season, which I watched that match and I was like, what happened? And then I think they've also lost to Montana State as well. And so lots of interesting losses for them that have kind of just added up, right? And so there was potential once it went to 5 that could the Wildcats beat them? Yeah, because lesser teams had done it. They had done it on the road, though, and this game was at the bank.
Yeah, definitely a disadvantage there. Plus, it was on senior night, and I heard there were long intro videos and giant shirts for the exiting seniors, and big families for all of the seniors. So a larger than usual crowd too.
Yeah, it was a pretty good sized crowd. They had almost 1,200 there that night. It was 1197 is the official attendance for Saturday night in Greeley. But let's talk a bit about that 5th set before we close out the segment here. 7 match point opportunities for the Wildcats. They had an ample opportunity to just get one more point, complete the reverse sweep and spoil senior night in Greeley, get a little bit of revenge for the way things went last season in the conference championship at Club Swenson, but it wasn't to be. The Wildcats fall in, fifth set's already extras basically, and it was extras. The Wildcats fall 21-19 in the fifth set, and just a really heartbreaking
Northern
loss.
Colorado's very first match point after we had our 7.
Yeah, their first opportunity, and they closed it out. And so it got me wondering, man. What do you make of that? Do you think it's experience? Because like Miah said, Northern Colorado is a very senior-laden team. They've got a lot of experience over there, and once they had their opportunity, they took it, and they closed out the match and win it in 3 or in 5 with 3 sets to 2.
Right.
Whereas the Wildcats, a young team, 7 opportunities to close out, just can't seem to get the ball to find the floor, and you lose 21-19. Do you think youth played a factor, or is it just, hey, man, that's just the way volleyball goes sometimes?
Oh, I think it definitely, youth in the home court played a part, but I thought they were playing really solid during those extra innings. And I think, playing for the lead in the league and saying, look, we really came and played a poor first game. But other than that, we were totally competitive. So I have my fingers crossed that this is one of those situations where it was painful to lose that match, but maybe that sets us up better for the next time we meet. And hopefully the next time we meet is for a slot in the NCAA tournament.
That would be incredible. The Wildcats have played the Bears in the last 3 conference championships. So yeah. And right now it's 2-1 in terms of championship rings for the Bears, and the Wildcats with the 1 in the spring and the Bears with 2 others. But
Right.
We will see. I think you're right, though. This could be fuel for the Wildcats going into the final homestand of the season, but also carrying them into the conference tournament, because this year's an interesting one. We'll talk about it in just a second in the next segment, but a lot of jockeying in the final weekend. The Wildcats could be anywhere from the number 1 seed to the number 5 seed. So that's quite a range with just 2 matches to play. So yeah, but I think you're right that the close loss, the heartbreaking loss, almost completing the reverse sweep is something that could potentially carry them through with some fire, because they're learning, and that stuff stings. I know that these ladies are competitive. They have played at a competitive level, and now they're, at the next level playing D1 volleyball. They want to win. And so they won't forget that anytime soon, I'm sure.
Right. So yeah, that was my only hope, that lost the battle, but maybe win the war.
Yeah, we'll see. So let's talk a little bit about the matches this week against Montana State and Montana. Like we said, want to talk a little bit about the playoff picture as it sits right now. In spite of the close loss to UNC last week, and the Wildcats remain in a position to win or to share or win outright the regular season conference title. Outright would mean that the Bears get swept this weekend. They lose 2. I think it's unlikely. They're a good team. Losing 2 in a row would be stunning, absolutely stunning. I haven't checked the schedule yet. Oh, I think they have to play Eastern and Idaho. They're taking the Palouse road trip. So, lesser competition, as it were. But the Bears...
But Eastern Washington just beat Portland State in Portland, right? So maybe Eastern Washington could be peaking, and they're fighting for a spot in the tournament, right? So
the only team
they've got more to play for in a way.
Yeah, the only team that has been mathematically eliminated thus far is the Idaho Vandals. So Eastern still trying to get an opportunity to come to Ogden and play in the conference tournament. So like we said, if the Wildcats can get 2 big wins against Montana State and Montana, who Montana has been playing better volleyball of late, they could potentially share, or they could win outright the conference championship. If they share, Northern Colorado gets the 1 seed because they have the tiebreaker, because the Wildcats lost to them on Saturday. They only play once this season, which is what it is. But yeah. And so Do you feel that seeding is important in this year's tournament? Because we've seen a good chunk of the conference now. We played almost everybody twice, except for Sac State and Northern Colorado. Is seeding, does it really matter? Because the Wildcats have been pretty competitive against everybody but Portland State, who has been tanking a little bit of late.
Yeah, I don't think the seeding's going to be that important.
I agree.
I think that that Weber could beat anybody, and I think with that young team, Weber could lose to anybody. So
you've seen it. Losing to Idaho State is a loss that looms large right now, right? Because had the Wildcats taken care of business and beat the Stripes in Ogden, they're ahead of Northern Colorado right now in of that loss. And so all they would have to do is win the next two matches. Northern Colorado would not be conference champions. They would be the two had the Wildcats.
Wouldn't they be tied though, and have the tiebreaker against?
Would they still be tied?
If they had one, right? If Weber had one less loss, then we'd be even with no. Oh yeah, we'd be even, and then they'd have the head-to-head.
Yeah.
Right.
So they would, if we won two, had the Wildcats beat the Stripes, Wildcats beat both Montana State and Montana this weekend, it'd be a similar situation, but you'd have potentially that opportunity.
Yeah.
But so I agree with you though. Overall, seeding probably not as big of a deal because the only team that's really given the Wildcats fits is Portland State. And if you don't end up on that side of the bracket or you face them at a time where they've been struggling, losing to lesser teams, anything could happen.
Right. And if it's 2 versus 3, you're still going to be lined up to play them in the second round. Right. So,
yeah.
And it doesn't really matter who's 2 and who's, it seems like the top 4 are a step above the next 4. So
yeah, I'd agree with that.
So whether you're playing 6 or 7 is probably not going to be key.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about this week then. So we've talked about kind of the stakes, what this week mean. Thursday, Montana State comes to Ogden. They're 5-5 in their last 10, and they're 2 of 6 on the road in conference play this year. I've been surprised at them. I talked about this the last time when the Wildcats took the Montana road trip, that Montana State has underperformed this year. I thought that they would be a top 3 team in the conference this season, and they haven't been that way. They've had some of their own struggles, and they just haven't had that. Like I said, on the road this season, not a great mark, 2 of 6. And so do you think the Wildcats can bounce back? Do you think there's a hangover from that close loss on Saturday? Or is it just, you know what, we're back home, it's business as usual? How do you see it affecting the team's psyche after a close loss like that and the emotions that go with it?
Well, I feel like we're still shuffling the lineup back and forth. Mm-hmm. And I think it's got less to do with the opponent than Weber working out for itself, who they are and what their best lineup is and trying to get in a groove heading into the tournament, right? With having played all of these different lineups, we're seeing in the play some occasional strange things that we didn't really see last season, where it was same lineup night after night. Everyone knows exactly where they're going to be because that's where they always are. I don't think there's a hangover. I think there's just, can we get the momentum rolling again? I guess that is related to hangover though.
Yeah. Really quickly, talking about Saturday's match against the Grizz, that will be senior day for the Wildcats. That match is going to be at Club Swenson at 6 p.m. So you'll be able to watch the football game earlier that day, unless you're going to Flagstaff. Then you should watch the volleyball game in your hotel room. But 6 p.m. senior day at Club Swenson, so make sure you're there. Montana, we've seen them already once this season, and we talked about Paige Clark last time. I mean, she had a monster game last time in Missoula, but it didn't matter because the Wildcats still swept. And so She continues to lead the conference in kills. She averages 3.86 kills per set. That leads all outsides, all players in the conference. She's kind of the main weapon for the Grizz. And so that also means, though, that she draws a lot of attempts. And so, David, do you feel like the game plan is roughly the same when the Wildcats took the trip to Missoula, that really it's about slowing Paige Clark down and making somebody else on the Grizz team beat you? And if they can't do that, a short day in the gym for the Wildcats.
Right. And that, when there's a central focus to a team, it's makes it so much easier on the middle blockers, right? Because
certainly
your first step, which way it's going, or at least your lean is going that same way.
Yeah.
When Danny sometimes gets overused, she's always facing these big blocks. Fortunately, she knows how to deal with that, but I'm sure that's the same thing for Paige.
Yeah. Last thing I want to mention before we wrap up this segment, a weakness that we talked about last time about how Montana, the Grizz are not great at defending against the service ace. Feels like the Wildcats have gotten better at the service ace in the last couple of weeks. We've really started to see Ace State come back. And so I kind of wanted to ask, like, is that a thing that you feel like could be a factor in this match against the Grizz, that they continue to struggle at defending from when the ball comes over from the opposing team, and the Wildcats take advantage? Because it seems like that's a skill set that has gotten sharper in the last couple of weeks.
Well, it'd be awesome if it does. We've still had a lot of service errors going on. How are we doing in differential? Have you looked at that?
I haven't looked at the differential between errors and aces themselves, but it does feel like, obviously there have been matches where the errors have been a huge factor. I've talked about how the errors are often a thing that sparks a run for the other teams. The Wildcats put the ball into the net, give the side out to the other team, and then they go bam, bam, bam. They get 4 or 5 points in a row and get themselves back in the set when the Wildcats have built up a lead. And so definitely a factor, but it also feels like the team is getting better. Danny Richens had 5 service aces in the Northern Arizona game. Just those kinds of things, they make a difference.
Yeah. Well, I was the one that christened her the Ace Queen with my poster last year. And the poster I'm bringing on Thursday is celebrating the Weber State Wildcats, because their blocking
has been good this year. Yeah, the block has been very good.
What are they? They're number 25 in the nation as of tonight. I don't know how they'll be as of Thursday. And wow, where did that come from? That they were a serving team last year, and that they're a blocking team this year. Oh yeah, it might be a whole bunch of tall freshmen.
Makes a difference. Looking at the numbers, Wildcats currently ranked 21 in the nation in blocking, averaging 2.6 a set. They're 24th in the country at opponent hit, holding teams to about a 165. That's best for 24th in the country. Weber State Wildcats, yeah, man, the block has been extremely good this year. A couple other things to watch out for this week, just some other tidbits. Danny Richens is closing in on the number 4 spot in career kills for a Wildcat. She's 18 kills behind 4th place, so there's potential that you might see her break that record this weekend. Also, her ace numbers last weekend put her alone in 4th place for most aces in a career at Weber State. She's 6 aces behind 2 people who are tied in 2nd place. So she's 6 aces away from 2nd place in career aces at Weber State. And then we'll see how things go from there.
And that includes the tournament, right?
Yeah, I believe the numbers do include the tournament, right? And so,
okay. All right. So I think she's going to get there.
Yeah, it's just not just
2 matches. Countdown for that.
Flip some things over the board, like when John Stockton almost, got the 3-point.
Well, we've got the ace counter that they put in Club Swenson.
Oh, I love it.
Although poor guy who's doing it, we have to yell at him sometimes, ace, because
He's not paying attention. It gets
and then he's
lonely up
like,
there on the balcony,
I'm
I
going to
guess.
stare at the stats. Okay, it's an official ace. All right, fine, I'll do it.
So be ready for those matches this week, folks, against Montana State on Thursday, and then against the Wildcats against the Grizz in Club Swenson, senior day for the Wildcats on Saturday. So Thursday, November 17th, match will be at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Get your tickets at WeberStateSports.com or watch it on ESPN Plus like I will. Or Saturday, November 19th, against the Grizz, 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Buy your tickets, WeberStateSports.com or ESPN Plus. Then we're on to the conference tournament during Thanksgiving week. That will be.
Bring your friends to the matches. I got 5 friends coming with that I'm dragging along to the Thursday match. So
terrific. I mean, we've said it a number of times here. If you need tickets and you're not quite sure, hit us up. We've got season tickets for these last 2 matches at Club Swenson. And if you're interested in going, but you haven't gone yet and you're looking for a cheap deal, hit us up. Glad to share our season tickets with you and support the ladies at Club Swenson. So that's it, man. I mean, that's the remainder of the season. We'll just find out how things go in the Big Sky Conference tournament, which will be from November 23rd to November 26th. We'll wrap the show. Email us.
Of the regular season. We got more to do.
That's right. Remainder of the regular season, there is more to do. The Wildcats, I think, are basically assured a spot in the conference tournament. So it isn't like they're not making the tournament, folks. There's at least one more match on top of that. And then we'll just kind of see what happens.
Yep.
So email us, WeberStateWeekly@gmail.com, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Patreon, WeberStateWeekly.com for the blog. David Moore, want to thank you for taking the time to chat volleyball with me tonight, man. Really appreciate your time and your insights. We'll wrap it up like we always do. Weber State.
Great.
Go